Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. When a woman begins to ignore you, it can feel confusing, frustrating, and even painful. But before jumping to conclusions, it's important to understand that her silence isn't always about disinterest. It often reflects emotions, boundaries, or unmet expectations. A woman doesn't ignore without reason. Every action has a message behind it. The key lies in understanding what that message truly means. When a woman begins to ignore you, one of the most powerful and often overlooked reasons is emotional neglect. Emotional neglect doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. It often means you've stopped doing the small things that made her feel seen, valued, and emotionally safe. Women thrive on emotional connection. They need to feel understood and appreciated beyond surface level gestures. When that emotional energy starts to fade, she begins to sense a gap between what she gives and what she receives. That imbalance creates silent frustration, leading her to withdraw her attention not as revenge, but as a protective measure to guard her feelings from further disappointment. In many cases, a woman won't openly tell you that she feels neglected. Instead, she communicates through subtle shifts. Her tone softens less, her replies shorten, her enthusiasm fades. These are not signs of disinterest, but silent cries for emotional awareness. When a woman feels invisible in a relationship, she doesn't necessarily want grand gestures. She wants consistent presence, active listening, and emotional availability. Her silence is not a punishment. It's an emotional boundary, signaling that something vital is missing in your connection. Ignoring, in her mind, becomes the only language that might finally get your attention. It's also essential to understand that emotional neglect can stem from a lack of empathy or presence. If your focus is always elsewhere, your phone, your work, or your own stress, she begins to feel that she is no longer a priority. Over time, this emotional distance grows wider, and she retreats into silence rather than confrontation. Most women avoid conflict not because they are weak, but because they know when energy is no longer being reciprocated, words lose their power. So she chooses quiet. Her withdrawal is her way of saying, if you can't meet me emotionally, I'll stop reaching out altogether. Emotional neglect can quietly destroy even the strongest relationships because it erodes the foundation of trust and intimacy. When a woman ignores you due to emotional neglect, it's her final attempt to restore balance without words. She's not asking for perfection. She's asking for effort, consistency, and emotional awareness. When you fail to notice her emotional cues, she stops giving what she once freely offered: her warmth, her vulnerability, and her attention. The silence then becomes both a shield and a message that love without emotional connection eventually turns into distance. When a woman starts to ignore you, it might not always mean she has lost interest. Often she is testing your intentions. Women are naturally intuitive. They can sense authenticity, hesitation, and inconsistency with remarkable precision. When she distances herself, she might be trying to see if your feelings are genuine or merely temporary. Her silence becomes a quiet test of your patience and emotional strength. She wants to know whether your interest runs deeper than attraction, whether you are truly committed or just curious. In her world, actions speak far louder than words, and by stepping back, she is observing how you handle uncertainty and distance. During this period, she carefully watches how you respond. Do you lose your temper, chase desperately, or pull away in return? Or do you remain calm, composed, and respectful of her space? The way you react reveals more about your true character than anything you could say. A woman testing your intentions doesn't want grand promises or dramatic gestures. She wants stability. If you panic when she pulls away, it shows insecurity. If you become defensive or cold, it shows immaturity. But if you show consistency, understanding, and patience, it tells her that you are emotionally grounded. She's not ignoring to play games. She's observing to find clarity. Testing intentions is also a way for a woman to protect her emotions from getting hurt again. Many women have experienced false promises, half-hearted efforts, or relationships that lacked emotional depth. When she ignores you, she is often protecting herself from falling into the same cycle of disappointment. She needs to ensure that your attention is not just momentary excitement, but genuine care that lasts beyond convenience. Her silence is a filter. It separates those who are serious from those who are simply passing through. Only the ones who stay calm, steady, and respectful during her quiet phase earn her trust and emotional openness. This test is not meant to confuse you, but to reveal your intentions. A woman knows that anyone can express affection when things are easy. But real love is proven during moments of distance and silence. By ignoring you temporarily, she is looking for assurance without having to ask directly. If you can respect her need for space, show understanding, and remain patient without pushing, you pass her test without realizing it. A silence is not rejection. It's an invitation for you to prove your sincerity through consistent energy, patience, and presence. One of the strongest reasons a woman begins to ignore you is inconsistency. When your actions and words don't align, women value stability and emotional clarity. When you show affection one day and distance the next, it creates confusion and emotional imbalance. She starts to question your true intentions. Is he really interested? Or am I just an option? Inconsistency shakes her trust, making her feel unsafe in your emotional world. Over time, these mixed signals cause her to withdraw, not because she stopped caring, but because she no longer knows what to believe. Silence in this case becomes her defense mechanism against uncertainty. Let mixed signals send an unspoken message of unreliability. When a woman doesn't know where she stands with you, she begins to retreat to protect her peace. You might think she is playing hard to get, but in truth, she is just tired of trying to decode your emotions. If your words promise closeness, but your actions deliver distance, she learns that believing you only leads to disappointment. Women remember patterns, not promises. So if she starts ignoring your messages or no longer engages like before, it's her quiet way of saying, I need something real, not temporary confusion. Inconsistency doesn't just make her doubt you, it makes her doubt herself. When your behavior constantly changes, she starts overanalyzing everything she does. She wonders if she is the reason for the shift, if she said something wrong, or if she's simply not enough. That internal doubt eats away at her confidence. To escape that emotional turbulence, she chooses silence. Ignoring becomes her way of regaining control over her emotion. Rather than confronting you with questions she already fears the answers to, she distances herself to protect her heart from the emotional chaos inconsistency brings. Women crave emotional transparency, the kind where words match actions and affection remains steady. When you fail to provide that, she begins to see distance as peace, not punishment. Ignoring you isn't her attempt to manipulate, it's her attempt to find balance after being emotionally confused for too long. Inconsistency is like emotional noise. It drowns out trust and makes communication impossible. Her silence, therefore, isn't just absence. It's a message. Until your energy aligns with your words, she would rather stay quiet than be part of an uncertain connection. Mishte, ye got kuruna ajritar. When a woman starts to ignore you, it often stems from a deep sense of self-respect and the need to re-establish her boundaries. Contrary to what many believe, her silence isn't always about disinterest. It's about dignity. A woman who values herself will not continue to invest emotional energy in someone who fails to meet her halfway. When she feels that her kindness is being taken for granted or her efforts are being overlooked, she chooses distance over drama. Ignoring you becomes her way of saying, I respect myself too much to keep showing up where I'm not valued. This act of withdrawal isn't weakness, it's strength in its purest form, the courage to walk away from emotional imbalance. Woman's boundaries are shaped by her experiences. Times when she gave too much, trusted too quickly, or tolerated behaviors that drained her spirit. When she sets those boundaries again, it's because she's learned that peace is more valuable than constant emotional uncertainty. If you've crossed her boundaries, whether intentionally or unknowingly, she may not argue or explain. Instead, she will simply disconnect. Silence for her is a shield, a barrier that protects her heart from further hurt. Ignoring you isn't an act of cruelty, it's self-preservation. It's how she reminds herself that she deserves emotional reciprocity, not confusion or inconsistency. Self-respect also means knowing when to stop chasing clarity from someone who doesn't provide it. When a woman stops responding, she's often choosing herself over the cycle of disappointment. She's recognizing that her mental and emotional energy is precious. Rather than fighting to prove her worth, she steps back to let her absence speak for her. A woman with strong self-respect understands that silence has power. It communicates what words often fail to express. When she stops trying to fix or explain, it means she has accepted that some connections are better left unanswered than forced into understanding. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters that separate what strengthens her from what weakens her. When she ignores you, she's not building distance out of pride but out of self-awareness. She's reminding herself of her value and refusing to engage in emotional spaces that no longer align with her peace. Many men mistake this silence for coldness, but in reality, it's a woman choosing healing over hurt. Emotionally ignoring you becomes a declaration that her respect for herself will always outweigh her desire for your attention. When a woman begins to ignore you, one of the most misunderstood reasons behind her silence is emotional overload. Life can become heavy, filled with stress, anxiety, pressure, and emotional chaos. In those moments, even the strongest women reach a point where they can't handle one more conversation, one more argument, or one more emotional demand. When she's overloaded, she withdraws not because she doesn't care, but because she needs to protect her peace. Her silence is her way of saying, I need to breathe. Women often carry emotional weight quietly, and when it becomes too much, their first instinct is to retreat into stillness, to regain control of their thoughts and emotions. Emotional overload doesn't always come from the relationship itself. Sometimes it's the accumulation of everything happening in her life: work stress, family issues, personal insecurities, or unresolved pain can all build up until she feels drained. When that happens, even small interactions can feel overwhelming. If she begins to ignore messages or avoids conversations, it's rarely out of malice. It's her subconscious trying to create space to recharge. Many men misinterpret this distance as rejection or indifference, but in truth, it's a silent request for understanding and patience. She's not shutting you out. She's simply trying to find herself again amid the noise of her own emotions. Another layer to emotional overload is unprocessed emotion. Women are emotionally intuitive, but that also means they feel everything deeply. When emotions pile up faster than she can process them, she becomes mentally and emotionally exhausted. In such times, talking can feel like another burden, so silence becomes her refuge. She ignores because words feel too heavy and emotional connection feels too demanding. What she truly needs in those moments isn't confrontation or constant questioning, it's empathy. A woman dealing with emotional overload craves quiet understanding, a kind of unspoken support that doesn't demand explanations. Emotional overload changes the way she interacts. She may stop laughing as easily, replying as quickly, or sharing as openly, not because she's lost interest, but because she's protecting what little energy she has left. Ignoring you can be her way of creating emotional distance so she can recover. It's her reset button, a pause to restore her inner balance before she can give again. When a woman goes quiet during emotional overload, she is not rejecting love. She is trying to refill herself so that she can once again show up with the warmth and depth she naturally brings. Her silence isn't emptiness. It's a sign that she is healing in her own quiet way. When a woman ignores you, it's often not about what you've done in the present, but about what she's lived through in the past. Past experiences shape how a woman responds to emotional situations, especially if those experiences were filled with betrayal, neglect, or disappointment. Every heartbreak leaves a trace, and those emotional scars make her cautious. When she senses a familiar pattern, even if it's small, she instinctively pulls away to protect herself from reliving old pain. A silence, therefore, becomes a shield built from lessons learned the hard way. She ignores you not because she doesn't care, but because she is terrified of repeating a cycle that once broke her. For many women, trust doesn't come easily after being hurt. Once someone has taken advantage of her kindness or manipulated her emotions, she becomes more guarded. So when a new person enters her life, she observes closely your tone, your consistency, your energy. The moment she detects something that reminds her of a painful chapter, she retreats. Ignoring you might seem cold or sudden, but it's actually self-protection in disguise. She's not being dramatic or distant without reason. She's trying to avoid giving her heart to someone who might make her feel the same kind of pain she once promised herself she'd never feel again. Past trauma also alters how she interprets behavior. What might seem like a small delay in your response, a change in your mood, or an inconsistency in your attention can trigger deep-seated fears of abandonment or deceit. She begins to question your intentions, not because of anything you've done wrong, but because past experiences have taught her to expect disappointment. Her silence is a wall she builds while she observes if your actions match your words. It's a quiet period of evaluation. She's watching to see if you're different from those who once let her down. Ignoring in this sense isn't a rejection. It's her way of gathering emotional evidence before she decides whether it's safe to open up again. Overcoming the weight of the past takes time and emotional patience. When a woman ignores you because of her past, what she truly needs isn't pressure but reassurance. Her silence is a reflection of her inner conflict, a battle between wanting to trust again and fearing that doing so will lead to more pain. She's not trying to punish you for someone else's mistakes. She's trying to protect her heart from breaking once more. Understanding this requires empathy, to realize that her quietness is not a wall against you, but a boundary shaped by history. One she's hoping someone patient enough will help her slowly dismantle. When a woman ignores you, it can serve as a powerful moment of reflection, not just about her feelings, but about your behavior, your consistency, and the quality of the connection you've built. Silence forces you to confront what you may have overlooked when communication was easy and constant. It gives you the chance to ask yourself important questions. Have you shown genuine interest? Have you been emotionally attentive? Have you provided the security and clarity she needs? Ignoring isn't always an ending. Many times, it's a pause that invites you to grow. It's a moment designed to make you more aware of how your actions impact her heart and emotional well-being. This pause in communication reveals truths that often go unnoticed during daily interactions. Her silence can highlight the gaps, the conversations left unfinished, the emotions left unacknowledged, the effort that slowly faded over time. When she stops responding, you start to realize how much her presence mattered. You notice the void she leaves. Reflection in this moment isn't about guilt or blame. It's about awareness. It's about understanding what you could have done differently and how you can improve if she chooses to reconnect. Her silence gives you time to adjust, evolve, and show that you're capable of more than what you have shown so far. Reflection also means recognizing her value. Many times, we don't fully appreciate someone's emotional contribution until it's no longer there. A woman doesn't ignore for no reason. Something triggered her distance. That reason becomes your opportunity to become more emotionally mature, to communicate better, to listen with intent, and to show more consistency. Instead of reacting with frustration, you're given the chance to respond with emotional intelligence. As silence pushes you to reflect not only on how you treat her, but on how you handle relationships, vulnerability, and responsibility overall. Ultimately, when a woman ignores you, it's a mirror, one that reveals both your strengths and your weaknesses. Reflection is the first step toward rebuilding trust, understanding her needs, and strengthening your own character. Silence can be painful, but it can also be the most honest form of guidance you'll ever receive. If you can take this moment to grow rather than complain, to improve rather than blame, then her silence becomes a lesson, one that can lead to a deeper, healthier, and more meaningful connection in the future. In the end, when a woman ignores you, it's never without meaning. Her silence is not emptiness, it's communication in its quietest form. It carries the weight of unspoken emotions, unmet needs, and lessons she's learned through her journey. Instead of reacting with frustration or ego, see it as an invitation to understand, to listen, and to evolve. Every moment of distance is an opportunity to rebuild trust, to correct what was once overlooked, and to become emotionally wiser. A woman's silence is powerful. It teaches patience, empathy, and self-awareness. If you can read between the lines of her quietness, you realize it's not rejection, but reflection. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections are not strengthened through constant words, but through thoughtful understanding during moments of silence. So, when she ignores you, don't chase her with noise. Meet her with calm, respect, and maturity. That's when silence transforms into understanding and distance turns into growth.